Teachers of Reddit, what is the most ridiculous thing you have heard a parent say? Taught in an old, impoverished town. Father told me he would not allow his son to read poetry because it would make him gay. Oh frick, that explains everything. I had a parent tell me he cut his daughter's hair in a short bob because they notice her attitude gets bad when her hair gets too long. I had another parent tell me his kid was acting dumb for my benefit and that he is really smart at home. They still refuse to get him any tutoring. When talking to a parent regarding behavioral issues, the parent said from 8-2, "He's your problem, not mine." Every single adult should know where every single child is on campus at all times, the mom said, yelling at me. I had been giving her son extra help after school, along with some other students. We were 6 weeks in and mom hadn't come to back to school night or made any attempt to speak to or contact me. She came to pick up her son and had no idea where to go because she hadn't been to our school before or read the after school group flyer. Instead, she yelled at some other teachers who were waiting out in the front of the school with some of their own after school students to be picked up. They had no idea who she was or who her child was. She couldn't ask them where my class was because she didn't even know the name of her child's teacher. I walked up with her son as this was happening. She turned and continued to chew me out. She said a lot of ridiculous things that day. It was complete and blatant projection of irresponsibility. At the end of each year, all the students' merits are tallied up and the top 3 students get a prize. One of the parents was complaining about how it's unfair their child started so low every year. It was a lot harder for them to get to the top. The list starts alphabetized. Teacher, to be fair, today we will line up reverse alphabetical so everyone gets a chance to be first. Oblivious teacher never noticed that the change was never of benefit to those in the middle of the alphabet. I have a few stories, but my favorite happened to a coworker. This girl didn't study and skipped most of the questions on a test. Mom came in to argue about her daughter's failing grade and said she should only be graded on the questions she did answer, so therefore should have scored a 100 since the few she chose to answer were correct. This makes me wonder just how the parent got through school. I was told last year that the obvious reason I work in special education is because I can't get a job teaching normal children. I can't wrap my head around someone not seeing how this is obviously the harder job. I taught 4th grade next to a military base, so my class list was in pencil. Midway through the year I got a Dutch girl. She didn't speak a word of English. Her dad dropped her off in my room after signing her up, then told me not to make any exceptions for her. She'd learn English on her own. However, she was to be exempt from math BC. She's never had a math class before. The man was an engineer with the army. I taught her math. She appeared to have very limited exposure to it. By the last semester she was on honor roll, including math. Intellectual property is a real grey area in regard to blatant plagiarism. I was in an IEP meeting when the counselor asked the student what his post-high school's plans were. He proudly stated that he was interested in studying animal science. His mother angrily swung her head at him and said, "Animal science? Oh heck no. What about our plans for the NFL?" The student got embarrassed and said, "Well, I need a backup plan, Mom." And she said, "Not when you're as great of a player as you." The student was mediocre at best at football. Mom just wanted a kid with a giant paycheck. For the taxes we pay, we expect our teachers to get our kids into any college we want. Got fired once because I gave a C to the daughter of the president of the school board. Kid deserved a D. Slacker wouldn't do a dang thing. I like to think that she went on to flunk out of college. Not as bad as some, but when I was student teaching, a parent emailed saying to give his child a C. No reason. Just give her a C. She was getting an F and I couldn't believe the insanity of just saying what boiled down to C. Now. Apostrophe. Yes, my child is misbehaving, throwing chairs, hitting other kids, etc. But you took his paper airplane in 2nd grade and scrunched it up. So this is really your own doing. I think the best thing to do is for you to help him make a new paper airplane and apologize. Then I'm sure he'll behave. The kid was in 6th grade at this point. That is just embarrassing. Spanish class. Parent asked me to exempt her kid from speaking anything in Spanish. Said it made her daughter uncomfortable to say anything in Spanish. Had an Asian kid that was acing everything. Straight A's. I told his mother that I think he is a little bored. She puffed up and said I will go home and speak to him about that at once. You just killed a poor little Asian kid. After Thanksgiving, but before Christmas, one mom said, if you don't let my daughter sing Oh Holy Night for the Christmas show, I'll withdraw her and my son from this school, and you'll never again have such talent. Truth is, her daughter couldn't sing on pitch, no matter what, and didn't even try, because she had zero interest in it. This makes me so freaking sad. I hate how parents force their passions and interests on their kids when the kids have zero interest in any of it. There's an episode of South Park that shows this, the one where the kids are on a baseball team that they couldn't care less about. I used to be a preschool teacher, ages 4 and 5, and we did evaluations every few months. One 4-year-old girl, sweet as could be, could only count to the number 4. She struggled with other things, but the counting was by far the worst. Her parents come into the evaluation and are delighted that their daughter could count to 4. We had to gently explain to them that she was well behind the other kids. Even the actually challenged kids surpassed her. She was obviously bright, so we asked them what they worked on with her at home. Nothing. They did nothing with her. They assumed that she wouldn't start learning till teachers taught her. To their benefit, they did start working with her at home, and by the beginning of the next year she was ready to move up. I've never been so proud and disappointed at the same time in a set of parents. Well, thank God they actually did what you said when you gave them advice. This might not really count, but when I was a swim instructor, this parent was complaining about how her son wasn't improving in the swim lessons. It was true that sometimes I had trouble motivating him, but I felt he was doing well. Apparently she also complained that I wasn't the only one teaching his lessons and that I got several substitutes. That was not true. I taught all of the lessons. So in the next lesson, I thought the kid was doing well again and improving. I even got him to swim short distances without assistance. He was 5 years old and he couldn't touch the bottom. The mother didn't seem to think so. She said something like, he can't just keep going back and forth and kicking the whole time. You do realize that's how people swim, right? They sadly didn't come back. I'm a swim instructor too, and I totally relate to this. Some parents just don't understand that their 4 or 5-year-old won't instantly be able to swim laps after a couple of lessons and make the problem about my teaching instead. My aunt's a teacher, and I remember her telling me about one strange parent encounter a year or so ago. She taught maybe the 6th or 7th grade. There was this one kid in her class severely underperforming, and even after numerous confrontations with him, he never worked in class or got his grades back up. My aunt had to call his mother down to the school and sat down and tried to talk to her about it. She mentioned that she felt that he had the capacity to perform much better, but he didn't. Well, the mother just denied it. To be clear, she wasn't crazy or anything, just an absolute denial. My aunt showed her his grades, but she ripped the paper apart and told her that it's not true. She said, I don't know what you're talking about. My son is perfect, and stormed out of the school. At parents' evening, don't worry about my daughter. She's sick. She only needs to cook and clean. How is my son doing? How dare you tell my child that there were people before God existed? We were studying ancient Egypt and I mentioned that the priests they were reading about had similar roles to their priests and pastors. They just weren't Christian, since Jesus hasn't been born and Christianity hadn't started yet. I reminded the parents that there were parts of the Bible that took place before Jesus' birth, in Egypt. Before God existed, gotta love when people who are being dongs about their Christianity fundamentally misunderstand the Bible. Parents' evening last year, year 10, so 14/15 years old, told a woman that her son was doing really well in English and was very bright. She actually scoffed and said, really? The boy was sat there too. I asked what he was thinking of doing when he left school and he said he wanted to go to college to do A-levels. Kids at this school had ridiculously low aspirations, so this was music to my ears. His mother interjected and said, no, you're doing an apprenticeship. You're gonna be a plasterer like your dad. Now I have no problem with kids taking the vocational path as opposed to the academic, but this kid had a chance, and he wanted to take it, but his own mum made him feel that there was no point. So sad. I was a 22-year female Asian middle school teacher in a district that was 99% black. You couldn't find another person who looked quite like me in a 20-mile radius. Had a parent tell me that I couldn't possibly be a good influence on her child. After all, I do skanky things like nails and hair during my off hours. The community's impression of Asian women were that we all worked at nail salons. The extremely skewed Asian stereotypes, however, worked in my favor for classroom management when my kids were convinced I knew martial arts. Anytime I put on my teacher face when the students were misbehaving, one of the kids would exclaim, "Oh crap, Miss is about to kung fu your butt." I never had too much problems with the kids that year. It's not your job to teach my son lessons. I kid you not. I had to sit back for a moment to recover from reading that. Multiple times over the school year, she emailed me with something like, "My child has been coming home saying she has no homework in your class. I believe she should be having homework from your class every day. Can you please give her some homework?" 1. There was actually homework. 2. The kid was not turning in any homework that quarter. 3. The zeros were all reflected in the online grade report, which the parent apparently refused to read. My mother is a retired college English teacher. Helicopter parents would regularly call to inquire about their kids' grades. "Mom, that's confidential as per college policy. If you want to learn your child's grade, you're going to have to ask him." Her parent, "But I'm paying her tuition." "Mom, it doesn't matter. Your child has a right to privacy. I will only discuss your child's grade with him." Her parent, "I'm calling the dean." "Mom, by all means." Rinse and repeat, over and over and over. Parent of a child with behavior problems sends him to school with crap for breakfast every day. Fast food, Starbucks, cupcakes, you name it. We spent a lot of time trying to get her to even feed the kid breakfast in the first place, because he refused to eat what was provided at school and was an absolute nightmare on an empty stomach. We're talking hide under the desk screaming all day levels of difficulty, so we didn't say anything for a while, because at least he was on time and eating. Except then all the other students, who previously had no problem with the milk, cereal, and fruit that they got at school, started noticing the smug kid eating his delicious pancakes, or whatever he had that particular day. It became a full-blown kindergarten hunger strike, and it was miserable. When we asked the mother to please make an effort to feed him prior to arriving at school, she said she didn't have time, unless we wanted him to be late every day. Another problem that took forever to resolve. We reiterated that the school provided a perfectly healthy breakfast for free, and maybe she could make an effort to convince him to eat what everyone else got. He would literally do whatever she asked. It was just a matter of staying for 10 minutes to eat with him, she said. I don't want him eating that sugary, processed crap. He took his McDonald's with an aide in the classroom for the rest of the year. Kindergarten teacher here. 1. Why isn't my child writing their name yet? 2. I don't want my child wearing sunscreen. We live in far north Queensland. 3. I took my child to the GP. He doesn't need a specialist. 4. My child is free range. I will not vaccinate. My wife is an elementary school teacher and suspected that one of her students may be autistic. The kid wouldn't communicate well at all, had issues with using the bathroom, and showed other classic signs of autism. My wife had a conference with the mother and explained that she would like him to be evaluated, but the mother refused and said that if her son did have autism, my wife was the one who caused it. I'm not a teacher, but I coach my kids' youth sports teams. I once had a dad approach me and bribe me $50 to prevent a certain kid from playing in our upcoming flag football game. These were 6-year-old kids. The kid did make a costly mistake in the previous game, but the fact that this random dad was willing to pay me to bench the kid was mind-blowing. I hate parents that are too into their kids' sports. These kids are 6. The point is to learn from your mistakes. My mom frequently is forced to let kids retake tests because they didn't do well on them. Not because the kids have any sort of problem, but because the parents complain that their genius somehow got a failing grade on a test, so the school just gives in and lets the kid redo it. 3rd graders' parents come in with a notarized list of demands. Children in my class must be prohibited from bringing in gluten, ever. They said they didn't want her to feel left out because other kids were eating gluten. No, she didn't have celiac. It was just the family's personal choice. I let their daughter choose who she sits next to each day. The class had a carefully coordinated seating plan. She'd be exempt from history class because she was too advanced for our history class but not advanced enough for an AP class. Long story short, they switched her to a private school before year's end. Country rodeo. She was calling her kids over. My daughter's senior class voted a medically handicapped girl prom queen. I feared they were playing a joke on her, but my daughter insisted they all truly wanted her to win. Her family was poor and the teachers chipped in and bought her dress, shoes, etc. The summer after graduation, I ran into the mother of another student in the class. This mother had pushed her daughter to be popular, bought her the best of everything, pushed her into being a cheerleader and even went to the point of trying to set her up with boys in her class. She actually chased them on her daughter's behalf. She's also a bit nuts, so I try my best to avoid her if I see her first. This day I wasn't so lucky. Immediately she started complaining about the student that was voted prom queen. She kept saying how her daughter should have been prom queen. The other students just voted for the other girl because they didn't want her daughter to get it, which was partially true. It was so unfair. She was so mad. Then she started on how horrible it was to vote in a girl that was in special ed classes because she really didn't deserve to graduate. She was so poor that the teachers had to buy her dress, as if it was a sin to be poor. I finally got sick and tired of her crap, and I didn't like her anyway, and told her what I thought. I thought it was a very nice thing for the students to do. This may be the only special moment this girl will ever have. Her daughter will have many special moments. It was so nice for the teachers to make sure she was dressed as nice as the other girls, etc. She was stunned to say the least. She expected me to agree with her, but I was sick of her. How she was nearly prostituting her daughter out to any boy who would date her. Told her daughter's friends about her sex life, and her crazy tirades every time I saw her. Now when I run into her, we live in a small town. She speaks and goes on her way, thank goodness. I'm not like a regular mom, I'm a cool mom. This family was incredibly well off. The little girl wore Matilda jean clothing every single day, which is expensive. The individual pieces are between $40 to $60. She almost never wore the same thing twice. Compare her to a little boy in my class. His dad was in and out of jail. He always wore dirty jeans and the same pair of boots. His mom cut his hair and you could tell, but he was full of personality. All the kids wanted to play with him. He got a little rowdy and did say some lightly inappropriate things like that's badass or what the heck, but I would never peg him as a behaviorally challenged kid. Well, the rich mother approached my lead teacher and flat out demanded that her little girl never have contact with this boy because he was a bad influence. She wasn't to sit by him or speak to him or play with him. When we refused, she gave all these instructions to her daughter, who would approach the little boy and announce over the whole class, "You have to leave here so I can play." People never ceased to pee me off. I was a high school varsity coach. I had a nice girl on my team, with very little talent. After not starting, her mom came up to me and said, "It is really sad that Jenny isn't playing. How can you hold it against her?" I asked her what she was talking about. Her response, "Well, her dad's brother dated you in middle school and he broke up with you." Funny thing is, I have no clue who she was talking about. It's crazy that her most logical conclusion was that you kept a girl on the bench because her uncle dumped you back in middle school. Somehow that was the reason why. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.